I don't know a single teacher who's quit who just was like, I hated the students. Right.
And that's never the reason.
That's never the reason.
I never really thought about that, but you're right.
It's never the reason. If you are born to be a teacher, that's what fuels you and helps you to thrive.
Welcome back to Small Town Big Stories. I'm your host, Nate West. Today, I got the opportunity to interview someone who is starting something new in the education world, Mr. JR Huff. He is starting the Liberty Academy here in Columbus, and he is currently in the planting stages of creating a whole new school that's going to go from kindergarten through 7th grade. So, very interesting, very passionate about learning, and very passionate about the future of our kids. So I hope you enjoy it.
At Zeller Insurance, we are proud of our Columbus roots. We have been part of the community since 1972. Supporting local businesses and organizations is a priority for us. Building relationships with our clients has been the foundation of our success for the last 50 years. Think of Zeller when you think of insurance. Whether you are looking for home, auto, business, life, or Medicare insurance, our team is here for you.
All right, JR, thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's get some background on you. So tell me about your life, like growing up, where you went to school, all that kind of stuff, the early days.
Sure, Nate. It can be a long question.
Okay.
So I grew up in Louisville. I was born in Louisville, went to Louisville Public Schools, graduated in 2000. So that would make me 40 this year, which is amazing to me. Left school, went to the University of Louisville for 4 years, got an undergraduate degree in political science while I was there.
Okay.
While I was there doing undergraduate work, I started working at a bank. So originally I had gone to school to be a teacher. And then, as a 21-year-old young man, you look at teacher salaries and go, well, I don't know if I can support a family on that, right?
Yeah.
And I had already started as like a teller at the bank on the side. And so I just sort of leaned into that, got a degree in something I was passionate about, politics, and then just pursued that career straight out of school. So worked my way up to a mortgage lender and a branch manager. Once I had sort of achieved that level, then I went back and got my MBA from Louisville. And then for those of old enough, we had the mortgage crisis of 2008 and 9.
Right. And
when you are the youngest mortgage lender at a bank, that's not great for your career prospects necessarily.
Okay.
So I lost my job in 2009, and I was in this really weird place where I didn't really enjoy being a mortgage lender. It wasn't my passion. I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. But I didn't have any other experience. And I've got an undergrad that Monster.com was a thing back then. I guess it's Indeed or something now.
Right.
You can't type political science into a job search engine and find something that pops up, right? So I felt kind of rudderless, and I ended up, and it was shocking to me. I never thought I'd be in this position. I was unemployed for a year.
Okay.
Just
a long time.
Yeah, it was a long time. And just unexpected, applying to things on the internet back then is not what it was today. You just sent things off into this abyss.
Right.
And then sometimes you got an email back and most times you didn't. And so I'm into this year of sabbatical, I guess, looking for a job. And this is going to sound like a fake story, but it's 100% true. A year into that, I got a letter in the mail from myself. I know. It was, I went to a summer camp, I guess, at 17 or 18. I can't recall it. I don't remember it. But it appears that we went through one of those like typical summer camp activities, right? Write a letter to yourself. What are you going to be doing in 10 years? The difference was whoever was running this camp mailed it 10 years later.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's wild. So I opened it up. I can still vividly remember standing down at the mailbox, I opened it up because it was like obviously
Children's handwriting.
you were worse than children's handwriting. And I opened it up and it says, in 10 years, I want to be married with a family, which, checked that box. And I want to be a teacher and have my own classroom. And within 30 days, I was applied to a master's level program at the University of Louisville to get my master's of teaching.
Okay.
So
if you're looking for a sign, you got it.
Exactly. Right. And I was never have been, not a top of the class student. Right. We're a 3.0er. Right. Okay. We go, I went to the master's program, and this isn't to toot my own horn, but like 4.0, totally engaged. Like it's exactly what I was supposed to be doing.
You're dialed in.
Oh
yeah.
So graduated, got a preferred substitute role at a high school in Louisville for a year. And then, they were closing another school as part of their school improvement plan in Louisville, move the middle school kids from that school into the high school that I was already at. And then I got my own classroom at that point and was teaching 7th grade social studies. So I'm a social studies teacher at that school. So I did that for 2 years in Louisville. And I taught for another 2 years at a different school in Louisville because that little experiment with the middle school kids and the high school failed after 2 years.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it was a failure. I would say the district looked at it as not the improvement they were looking for.
Okay.
And so then I taught at another school, both of those schools low performing, persistently low performing. So they were in the bottom 5% of schools in the country at the middle school level in terms of scores.
Ouch.
So my last 2 years, I taught 8th grade, and 25% of those kids read at a kindergarten reading level or below in the 8th grade.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's hard to get them to care about Thomas Edison when they're having trouble reading what you're putting in front of them.
If you're
right?
looking at the hierarchy of education, like we skipped all the base steps.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're missing a lot of those foundational blocks, it makes a lot of the next things sort of difficult to get to, right?
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of time trying to remediate basic skills rather than, right, you have these standards and all these things you're supposed to be doing, and you almost can't get to them because you're starting behind the starting line, right? I don't envy English teachers in low performing schools at all. They have the hardest job of all teachers. Like as a social studies teacher, you can engage students and bring them along in a story and they'll come with you. Even if they can't read, they'll at least come with you on the story.
Yeah.
When you're a language arts teacher trying to teach reading and everybody's starting up here at the starting line and your students are starting a mile behind the starting line, even if you get them halfway through the race by the end of the year, you still haven't made it to the finish. So it's looked at as a failure, but they've grown, five grade levels or something, but you can never, it's almost impossible to get them to the finish line when they start so far behind. So I hope I'm not talking too much. Tell me if interrupt me.
You're doing just the right amount of talking.
Okay. So after teaching there for 4 years, all during this time, my wife was working at Cummins. So she's worked up here for
she commuted from
for a while.
Louisville?
Yeah, actually, so we were living in Henryville.
Okay.
So we lived through the tornado in Henryville and all of those things.
Okay.
So this is a long, twisty road to get here.
Yeah.
So after 4 years in Louisville, I found a job at North, moved up here, and then taught at North for the last 4 years before we started on this journey of starting a new school. So, that kind of what brings us here.
So you got a wife works at Cummins. How many kids do you have?
I have three boys.
3 boys.
So I have a
lot of testosterone.
Yes, which is very different from I grew up with 2 sisters, so it's very different dynamic in my house than the house I grew up in. So I've got Lincoln, he's 13, Wyatt is 11, and then Grant is my 9-year-old, my youngest.
Okay, nice. What are they into?
We do a lot of travel baseball.
Travel baseball.
Yeah, so I coach the youngest's travel team here in town, and then the older 2 also play in the same program.
Okay.
So a lot of travel baseball. The others have they've kind of given up their other sports at this point, like on their own accord. So my middle son, Wyatt, is like the uber athlete in the family. Nobody ever faster than him on whatever field he's on. But he gave up basketball this year. He had been playing some Revolution basketball here in town.
Okay.
And just decided that he just wanted to focus on baseball and maybe pick up some hobbies on the side instead.
Yeah,
So.
my son's 10 and he's currently wanting to play all the sports.
Oh yeah.
So, it's basketball, it was football. We played soccer. He's thinking about baseball.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
10 is the place to jump in. You're still okay if you jump in at 10-year-old baseball.
Yeah.
You get a little bit older, and you're on a big learning curve to catch up.
He's a pretty good athlete, but we're kind of like, you figure out what you want to do, buddy. And we'll be supportive. But
the youngest two this year, they really wanted to play football, and we just couldn't. With our schedule that we've got going on, we could not commit because the practices are long and it's not close to our house. But we considered it quite a bit, but just couldn't do it. So,
well, let's get into the meat and potatoes. What we came here to talk about.
Oh yeah.
So, Liberty Academy. Like, I've asked a few people if they know about you, if they know about the school. And so far, everybody's like, there's something going on there, but I don't really know what's happening.
Sure.
So fill us in. Give us the basics, then I'll ask you some other questions.
Yeah, sure. So Liberty Academy will be what I call a character-driven classical school. Those are sort of redundant terms when you start talking about what classical education is, but we will start out as K through 7, and we will launch in the fall of 2023. So next school year here in town. And we're going to try to do something a little bit different. So it's going to be a private school, not parochially affiliated. So just a private school, no religious affiliations at all. And we will be, like I said, launching here in 2023.
Okay. So it's a new school.
Brand new school.
From scratch.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to parents now as far as getting enrollment lined up. Is that what's...
Yeah, sure. So, we've had some, of course, initial discussions with some families, and some members of our founding team. Obviously their students are already signed up and raring to go. We are going to be starting enrollment sessions. So sort of informational sessions, at the beginning of December. Our first one will be December 7th, and it'll be in the Red Room at the library.
Okay.
And then we will have rolling virtual sessions kind of in between those in-person sessions. So our first virtual session will be the next week. And then we'll take kind of the holidays off, and then it'll kind of be on an every other week basis going forward in the spring to try to just let people know here's what we're going to do and see if it's the right choice for their family.
All right. And so we talk about traditional curriculum. What exactly does that mean?
So it's a little bit different than what you see in a lot of the schools and what kids are just learning in public school in general.
The new math. We talk about new math. I can't figure out the new math.
Yeah. It's classical education is sort of more of a back to basics approach to education.
Okay.
So my grandmother's 101, just turned 101 last week. Yeah.
Wow.
And if I asked her to describe the type of education she got, she's probably going to describe a classical education.
Okay.
She's going to say, I learned Latin, I diagrammed sentences, I learned cursive, and just some of those things maybe that we've lost in education.
She probably remembers all her teachers' names.
She probably knows all of her teachers' names. And if you're looking for like a general definition of classical education, it's the pursuit of wisdom and virtue. That's your goal. You're trying to teach kids to love what's true, good, and beautiful in the world. And so that's what you're pursuing, rather than, what career am I going to take up after school, or what college am I going to go to? You still care about those things, and those are important, but you're learning for the sake of learning, because learning is important, and you're trying to cultivate a love of learning in students.
Okay.
So in terms of what they're learning, a lot of the learning is done through like an exposition of great books, right? We have a limited time in school to read books, and we think that it's really important to read the best books that have, the best themes that are tested over time. That doesn't mean you don't read contemporary or new books, but they need to be tested, and they need to stand some sort of, they have some sort of watershed about them that you come up to and you go, well, we could read this thing, or we could read this thing that's been read for 1,000 years or 500 years or 100 years. And people have read it over and over and over because it means something. There's something about it that makes sense. Right. Yeah.
I'll propose this question. Weird, but there's going to be a lot of technology involved in this.
Absolutely not.
Oh, there we go.
Absolutely not.
So you got to have some technology, I assume. So tell us kind of how the role of technology will be in your classroom.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of students, well, let's start with teachers. Teachers will need technology. We're not anti-technology. I'm not anti-technology. I've got an iPhone, whatever the newest one is, in my pocket right now. Right. Yeah. So for teachers, right, they'll have a laptop, they'll have a projector, they'll have a screen. Like in terms of the teacher's materials and things they're using, it will probably look like what a normal classroom would be.
Yeah.
For students though, we really see that technology, that laptop screen as a barrier to learning. In a classical education, you're talking about a teacher-centered classroom, right? Whereas in the public schools now, you'll hear them talk a lot about student-centered classrooms. So you're going to see a lot in public school. You're going to see a lot of group projects. You're going to see a lot of group work. You're going to see a lot of the teacher giving some instruction, and then the students sort of the learning kind of being pushed out to them, whether that's through an online platform or whether that's through some activity in the room.
Yeah.
In classical education, you're looking at something that looks more like the teacher up there facilitating a discussion and a back and forth. Especially the older the grades get, the more rich that discussion sorts of gets. In the lower grades, you're going to see a lot of like recitations and chants back and forth between the teacher. You're going to see a lot of what's called narration, where the teacher reads out loud and then all the students follow along in their book, and then they'll set it down, and then the students from memory give that back to the teacher, and then you sort of dig into what do these things mean, rather than, I didn't really feel like my kids went to public school here in town up until this last year. And, there was a time when I saw my third grader really getting stressed out about doing a Google slide presentation in the third grade.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this the best use of our time, or is this the best way for us to learn this? Right.
Yeah. Like, is this how enriching is that?
How enriching is that? And can't they learn that at an older age? Right. Are they losing something or missing something by, we can't connect this Google sheet to this Google sheet when we're in the fifth grade? Is that because we've all picked that up as adults because it didn't exist when we were kids?
Right. We just kind of we figured it out as we needed it to.
Right. Right. And any job you go to, any career path you choose, you're going to receive whatever training, or if it's a passion of yours, you're going to pursue it on your own. Right. So I would rather teach students to learn well and be discerning, be attentive to what they're doing. And if they have those skills, well, whatever technological piece you add in later, they're going to be able to adapt to that pretty quickly.
Well, the kids are learning all the time anyway.
Right.
So if you teach them the right way of doing that, when they're not in the classroom, the learning continues, right?
Yeah.
So.
And people say it to me all the time. Well, but we live in a technological world. How does this even make sense? And I've worked with young people for the last decade. We're fooling ourselves if we think that they're going home and they're pulling out that phone and they're working on their skills that they're going to have for their job later, right? I mean, you're looking at TikTok, you're doing Snapchat, Instagram. That's what they're using their time on their devices for. So I just think if a student is really technically inclined and wants to learn coding or something like that, a parent's going to pursue that, and they're going to pursue it outside of school hours. So I don't think we need to necessarily focus on that during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like there's a lot of life skills being had in that box.
Not in my experience, but again, I've only worked with young people for the last 10 years, so I'm not certain that I know all of it,
right.
but that's just my experience.
Yeah. So the name Liberty Academy has got a patriotic tone to it.
Sure.
Tell us a little more about that. I've been told that you're a history teacher, right? So social studies. So history has a lot to do with it, and core American values. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, obviously, you look at my kids' names, Lincoln, Wyatt, and Grant, and we can very
I'd put that
easily
together.
connect them to important historical figures. So we named it Liberty Academy on very intentionally because I think it's very important for young people to understand the history of our country in its entirety. And
Good and bad, right?
Right, good and bad, of course. And to understand the price that was paid for the privileges that we get to enjoy. Our curriculum has an American history focus to it. So it's a fairly traditional classical curriculum, but it does have more of an American history component. So what you do most years, if you look at the curriculum maps, is instead of taking an entire year. So for example, in let me just back up a little bit. In ninth grade, I was teaching freshman world history here in town. You are expected as a freshman world history teacher to go from the beginning of mankind to beginning of recorded history.
Okay.
Basically. Okay.
It's back there a little bit. Yeah.
So like Mesopotamia and a little bit further back than that.
Okay.
And you have to end the year with the end of World War II.
Okay.
So it's a wide span of things to do in a single year.
Yeah, we're cruising through that really at best, right? Like
you're there, you aren't, and that'll actually get to a classical like principle. I guess we can dive a little bit deeper into that. But so instead, what you see in this curriculum is you'll spend like half a year, and you might do the early civilizations, ancient Greece and Rome, and then that's it. And then you'll kind of stop halfway through the year there. And then you shift your focus to some part of American history for the second half of the year. So rather than doing 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 years, we break that up and do a couple thousand years, because in the ancient civilizations, that makes sense. And then we take some component of American history. And so you kind of do that every year rather than this shallow kind of learning across a wide time frame.
At that point, right? I mean,
you can kind of get into a lot more depth and breadth of whatever you're doing. So if we're camping out in ancient Greece for 6, 8, 10 weeks, we can talk very specifically about what did Aristotle believe about this or that, or what did Socrates believe about this or that, and how does
why?
How does that inform who we are now and the philosophers that have influenced America. Well, we can do that. Otherwise, like in my world history classroom, I spent 3-4 days on Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates, which when you look at their influence over philosophical
society,
history,
I mean, like everywhere.
yeah, you're just not able to do it in that. And again, public schools have a really, really hard job. I mean, you're trying to teach to a set of ability levels that's as wide as the oceans.
Yeah.
And you've got to do so many things to stay in sequence, and it just makes it really hard to get in depth in a lot of topics.
I had a thought that popped in my head. Oh, if you think about like how many subjects that you can say, like a bullet point, I learned this, and then you don't really know anything about that, right? Like Aristotle. Yeah, I learned about him. I can't really remember the details on it, right?
Right. But if you had camped out talking about him for a week and a half, and you had a teacher who loved Greek history and could teach it to you in a narrative story, and you could feel how much they loved it.
And just had a valuable conversation.
And just had valuable conversation between.
Yeah, instead of
I think you'd have
a
a higher likelihood of remembering more about Aristotle, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, a lot of the things that the things that I remember the most from my high school experience came from my favorite teacher, who I didn't know it at the time, but taught in classical style. He came in every day and he crafted a narrative story. And we took notes, And that's it. No computer in front of me. No, here's these 5 worksheets and go to this station and do that. I knew every single day that I was going to sit there and take notes for 45 minutes. And I cherished it and looked forward to it every single day because of who he was and how he was able to convey how much he loved what he was doing. And so, I mean, that's the type of teachers that we're going to look for at Liberty Academy. I can teach people how to teach in a classroom, how to facilitate learning. I can't teach people to love what they do.
Right.
I can't teach people to love a subject. And so if we can find experts in their subject that love students and love what they do and love their subject, then we're going to be set.
When do you start hiring teachers?
So it's a hard question to answer because that's one of the things people want to know are where are you going to be and who are your teachers, right? And teachers is actually one of the last questions you end up answering because you've got to go through your enrollment. Now, of course, I've had conversations with people in town that are very interested, but you don't start hiring until, you start getting students signed up.
Yeah. And if you're starting fall of next year, then you can't hire them today. They got to get through the school year that they're in right now.
Right.
And then over the summer. Okay. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So you'll start hiring, we'll start hiring in February. We'll start probably posting jobs and conducting interviews and those sorts of things.
And you're not like some kooky guy with like paying people cash, working out of your garage, right? Like this is, it's got some backing to it.
Yeah.
And like there's structure behind, I know you're a great teacher and, this magical school facilitator, but there's a lot more going on than just that, right?
Yeah. So we have a founding team that we've put together over the last year, each of them with a very specific different set of skills. And we've all been working together to sort of cultivate this plan and grow it up. I also was blessed to receive a fellowship through an organization called the Drexel Fund. So not associated with Drexel University. It's just a philanthropic organization that does nothing but support and help to grow character-driven private schools that specifically want to serve at least 1/3 of their population as low-income students. And so that fit into my business plan that I had originally written because I think it's really important to make private education accessible to everybody because, again, like I said before, the public schools just have a really hard job, and it's hard in a county with 13 to 14,000 students to have a choice that's right for everybody. And what I see when I look around Columbus is kind of limited choices. And so to kind of swing back around, I think that we'll be able to offer something that's different enough that can speak to a lot of those families that are looking for something else.
Yeah, I did a little background research on the Drexel Fund.
Yeah. So, sorry, I can swing back around and talk a little bit more.
Well,
about
I
that.
was expecting to see a bunch of like privileged white people.
No, that's not it at all.
All kinds of diversity. There was some Montessori schools. There was some parochial schools. I mean, there's just a little bit of everything in there. So it was the diversity there really surprised me and made me feel good about it because I was,
So the Drexel Fund, again, all they ask is that you support young people's character and that you serve at least 1/3 of your seats as low income. So we have reserved 1/3 of our seats for students from low income backgrounds. And then we have, we're like 99.9% done on our tuition model, but we are going to very specifically cultivate our tuition or curate our tuition so that it's based off families' AGI. So everybody makes some investment in education because we think that's important. But it's going to be what I call an appropriate investment, something that makes sense based on how much money you make. But yeah, to go back to Drexel, they've been a great support. So it's a national organization that again supports these private schools. And yeah, when you look at the portfolio, it's not just, we just support classical schools. You've got classical schools. You've got, they have a school that in Florida that, they build boats like that. The whole entire curriculum is built around, we do projects, and the projects are like boats. And then once the boat is finished, they sell it to fund the school. Like
That's
it's wild. Yeah, it's wild. And so, and yeah, the amount of diversity, a lot of these schools that are being started through Drexel are in very low income urban areas that, need something different to sort of help, revitalize some of those communities that have just deteriorated over time. And so, yeah, myself and 3 others were selected to be a part of their founders program, which, again, they have made an investment in the school that allowed me to resign from North in May. And then so my full-time job now is to do nothing but launch Liberty Academy. So that's been a really giant blessing for the school. And as part of that experience, we go around and visit other schools. A lot of them have been class school just by chance, actually, and work through their program to help refine our budget and guidance on philanthropy and all those aspects of being a school leader and starting something, again, like you said at the beginning, from scratch, from nothing.
So the hot topic right now is finding a location.
Yes.
And then so once we find a location, then it's going to be signing up kids and that kind of thing. So for all the people out here that have just a random building laying around for you to make your school, like how many students are we talking and what grades are we talking?
Yeah. So we're going to start K through 7.
Okay.
And we did that very intentionally. A lot of schools started just a few lower grades, right? K1, 2 or something like that. We see a real opportunity here in Columbus at 7th grade where a lot of our schools go through elementary and then stop. Right. And so our middle school options sort of dwindled down to what I consider a few options for our size at that point. So, our hope is to have a really robust lower grades, K1 and 2. We might be thin in those middle grades, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. There's a possibility we could end up with combined grades there. But that's okay. That's not anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah. And you'd have kids that are, like 6th and 7th grade, they have established relationships. So bringing them in fresh, it would be difficult, I would think.
Yeah. So, and there are some things that you can kind of do together in combined grades, right? History is really easy to do in combined grades. Science is really kind of easy to do in combined grades. Math, right? We have a plan to have everyone work at their appropriate math level. So, if you're in 1st grade and you're at a 3rd grade math level, you're going to go to the 3rd grade math class and do your math. So even if you are combined, so say you came in 3rd grade and 4th and we had, 12 students and felt like we needed to combine those grades, you're still going to get the appropriate instruction for wherever your skill set is in math, for example. So our target for the first year is 80 students right now. And I think that gives us a really robust, sturdy class to sort of start growing the school after year 1.
80 students.
80 students.
So let's see. If normal family has 2 kids, you have to be in contact with,
about 40 families. Yeah.
And so your day to day outside of hunting for this building that we can put 80 students in is also being in contact with those parents that have some interest. They're like, tell me more about it. And then you got to meet with them. And are you doing that, like that legwork just yet? Or is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had some one-on-one conversations with families that are very interested in what we've got going on. Like I said before, we are going to have information sessions that as we kind of up our advertising and continue to get the word out to everybody, we'd hope that people would start signing up for information sessions, either virtual or in person, and come to learn more about Liberty and what we're going to be, regardless of where our location is.
People want to know that building, though.
I know they do.
Oh my gosh,
I know they do. It's hard, but I look around Columbus, and I think people are very, if they feel like the choice is right for them. I mean, you can see families all over the city who are willing to drive to the complete opposite side to get their kids to what they think's right for them. Right. Yeah. And it's only about, I live way on the east side out by Rock Creek Elementary.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm a grammar kid. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so, it takes me 20 minutes to get over to the Walmart on the opposite side of town or something. So I think 20 minutes is a reasonable drive wherever we end up in between there to get, if you think Liberty's the right choice for your family.
Yeah. Cause in the end, if you think it's the right choice for your kids, you'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And I mean, we're trying to be very discerning, right? I mean, we've had some spaces that, could have worked or have been close, but you want to make sure that it's just that spot that checks all the right boxes so that families can come in and know, our kids are going to be safe and they're going to get the right environment to learn, in the environment that works best for their kids.
I'm excited to see the teacher crew that when you get it lined up.
Yeah.
Because I bet they're going to be like, I'm kind of picturing like the teacher that is more than just a regular teacher. I'm picturing someone's a mentor and somebody that when you get older, you can come back to that person and be like, hey, I feel like you'd be a good person to mentor me and,
oh yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's our hope. I mean, I think, we hear a lot about teacher shortage now, right? All the time, teacher shortage. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, being someone who's been in the field, the people I've seen leave the profession aren't leaving because they don't want to teach anymore. It's that so many other things outside of just teaching are being asked of them that eventually they just either become exhausted or disenchanted with everything outside of the classroom. I don't know a single teacher who's quit who just was like, I hated the students. Right?
And that's never the reason.
That's never the reason.
I never really thought about that, but you're right.
It's never the reason. If you are born to be a teacher, that's what fuels you and helps you to thrive.
I want to be a teacher. And then now I have all these new hurdles that I didn't used to have, or, the hurdles are just getting higher.
Right. Right. Or every year we've got this new thing we're going to try, or this new thing, or this new thing. It's kind of what's great about classical education is that it's just the same. It's the same every year. We're not going to chase, well, this new research says this or this. You take those things into account. And if there's something that's really, really making a difference, I mean, you've got to talk about it.
Right.
But a lot of these methods this has been done for 2,000 years and it's worked really, really, really well for 2,000 years. So from 2023 to 2024, well, we don't feel like we need to necessarily change that up.
I think we made it through all my notes.
Oh, wow.
So what else you want to talk about? I'll open the floor to whatever topic you think that.
Oh, wow. I mean, we could turn this into a cryptocurrency podcast.
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah, that's big news today. So,
no, I mean, so I guess I could talk about some things that we need or that we're looking for.
Yeah. I mean,
obviously any families that are interested, we would love to have them sign up for our information sessions or just call me directly or email us, message us through Facebook, find us on Instagram, any of those things. I'd love to sit down and maybe not in a podcast form, but talk to anybody about what we've got going on. We're looking for other community members that might be interested and feel like I've got a skill set that I can help lend a hand here. I could do something. I mean, I've had people that are super generous that have just come to me and said, if you have something, I don't have a lot of time, but if you've got something that's just like data entry that I can do on the side, that would just take up time that you need for something else, let me help you with that. And I've been able to do that and take some things off my plate. So, if there's community members who just say, I believe in what you're doing, I think this is good. You don't have to be anti-public school. You just have to think, wow, we need more choices here. And that would be a good thing. Yeah. And it sounds like what you're doing and pursuing character over and above everything else is worthwhile. Then sure, come and help us. We would love to have your skill set be involved in what we're doing. Obviously, it's a brand new school. If anybody feels led and would love to come alongside us in whatever way that's possible for them, I'm all ears for anybody that would like to join up. Outside of that, it's kind of, if you've got a $7,500 or 7,500 square foot building just sitting around that you'd like to rent to us,
children friendly,
we would love that. But I mean, that's, again, we've got a lot of options that we're pursuing. We just haven't found that perfect fit there yet. So if anybody's, if you attend a church that's got a lot of open space that's not being used, we're more than happy to come and talk to them and see if we could put some of that space to use and, help steward the church along if they're in a spot where, they're not being able to minister to people the way that they want to. We would love to come and bring some life back into that building. So, all of those are kind of options that we're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super cool. I didn't really know what I was getting into coming into this interview.
Oh yeah.
Just because I poke around a little bit and, do some Facebook stalking, that kind of thing. And it's a little bit mysterious. So,
Well, that's a bad thing. That means I'm not doing my job on advertising.
I think I think you need to change your tagline, like we're going to bring back true American grit. That's what we need.
I think that's important.
Well, I think if you polled people, like nobody's going to say, I think we're raising a generation of really tough, well-educated people, go-getters,
Yeah.
I just don't think that's a thing anymore. And I feel like you're really working towards creating those people again.
We're trying to. I mean, self-determination, American grit, those are things that kids need to learn and understand. I mean, children haven't changed.
Right.
Right? The expectations we've set for children have changed, but children haven't changed. If you set a really high standard, they will rise to that. I've seen that in some of the lowest performing schools in the state of Kentucky and by extension in the nation. If you set really high standards, kids will meet it. I still gave homework in 7th grade in a super low performing school, and 85% of my students turned it in every single time because they knew this is what I expected of them. I built a relationship with them. They knew that they mattered to me. And they join in that learning process with you. I think a big problem is that we're constantly lowering the expectations for students when they will just meet it if we give them the chance to.
It's okay. We didn't quite make it. I was like, it's not really okay.
No, it's not. I mean, and they'll get there. Yeah. They will. I mean, there is part of learning is the struggle to learn it. Right? I mean,
Right.
part of the learning is the struggle to learn it. And then again, talking about teachers, there's nothing that if you're a teacher you talk to, what is the thing that in your classroom that motivates you? And it's when you see that kid's eyes light up and
right.
They know it. They know it now. They didn't know it for the last 3 weeks. We've gone over it. We've talked about it. I've sent them home extra things. And then you see it. And then you see that light go off. And that's what teaching's about, right? And that's what motivates teachers. And again, if we just hold students up there to whatever that standard is that we want them to have, right? If we expect you to be attentive to what we're doing and we teach you that from when you're very young, then you'll have attention, right? You'll learn that habit of attention, and you'll pay attention to what's going on, and you won't every 5 seconds be reaching into your pocket to what's going on. The kids, we cultivate the habits in kids that we allow them to pursue, right? I mean, if everything that they focus on is less than 15 seconds long, then their attention span will be 15 seconds. Right? If we take them into a classroom and we have a thorough 45-minute discussion on what they read yesterday, then they'll be able to focus on something for 45 minutes and talk about it.
Yeah. And if you're going to do that, like, you can't squirm out of that. Right. Like, I knew I was supposed to read that, but now I got to be stuck in the classroom.
The teacher is going to call on me, right? Rather than, I mean, so much of what we ask, I think that we ask students to do now is like, well, we can't ask them to do anything outside of the classroom because of X, Y, Z, F reasons. But again, if you just hold them to it and say, hey, we're going to talk about this tomorrow, and be reasonable about it, right? In high school, I taught high school. I understand kids, especially here in Columbus, super athletically. It's a huge town for athletics, kids athletics. Yeah. And those are really, really important to build character and build those sort of skills in kids. So you just have to be conscious of that, right? When you get up into those high school levels, we won't start there, but when you get up, you just have to go, okay, well, we got to make the workload manageable. But as long as you make it manageable, kids can do that, right? You can't spring a pop quiz on them. That's, well, if I went home tonight and I had a volleyball game and a basketball practice and this and that, because kids are doing 5 different sports, well, that's not fair to them, right? You just have to be reasonable in your expectations, but you can be reasonable with high expectations. So. Yeah, I feel like I'm rambling on here. What else?
No, I think you've done a fine job.
Yeah.
So, well, man, I really appreciate you coming in and talking about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get the word out there a little bit more and get people engaged with you and get to finding that location and yeah, hopefully, let's see what is so this time next year you're going to be too busy to talk to me again, but
This time next year. So yeah, I visited some first year school leaders and, they looked zombie-ish.
Yeah.
After you go through I guess I'm already about 18 months into this process from like original idea to now. And so, yeah, once you're down a 2.5 year path,
well,
the exhaustion starts to set in at that point.
Let's do it this way. You'll either have to cut out a half an hour to give us some follow up, or you'll have to send your number one teacher or something to tell us how it's going.
That'll be perfect. No, Nate, I can find time for you. I can do that. We can do that.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you giving us time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.